Brief interruption. We've changed locations. We'll wait a couple seconds to see if anybody joins us, hopefully. Again, I apologize. Anybody joining us? Probably do this one over again tomorrow or something.
One person's back. 2. I think Tristan's one of the 5.
All right, so we got 5 people back.
6. I could tell a snake joke. Kim Johnson Brown says hi. Hi, Brian says Karen Short. Lloyd Short.
Hello.
What did the snake say when he heard a funny joke? He said that's hysterical.
All right. How many people did we lose after you just told that joke?
We lost one.
All right, well, 6 people is enough. Again, I apologize for the interruption. That room is sometimes a dead zone. I guess on a rainy, cloudy day, this doesn't work really well. But if you missed it, we're probably going to do this over again, maybe tomorrow or next week, because I'm sure a lot of you missed my very important spiel on the eastern milk snake and the northern water snake. But at least you'll see the copperhead. So, without further ado, we'll take out the copperhead. All right. And here you go. And this is a gorgeous eastern copperhead. It used to be called the northern copperhead, but it was recently some subspecies were lumped together. The southern and the eastern are now, actually the southern and northern copperhead are now called the eastern copperhead. Now, identifying a copperhead is very, very easy once you know the key features on it. The number one, look at these bands going across her back. They have bands kind of shaped like an hourglass, or some people say it's like 2 Hershey kisses coming together, or it's kind of like a saddle on a horse. So they have these hourglass bands going across their back. Also, you know, she's a brilliant coppery color, especially if you look on top of her head. She's got that nice coppery color. Venomous snakes, pit vipers, especially like copperheads and rattlesnakes, do have a triangular shaped head, but you can't always go on that. That's because many non-venomous snakes will flatten out their heads when they feel threatened. Garter snakes, eastern hognose snakes, water snakes, those 3 species of snakes will flatten out their heads when they feel threatened, and their heads will look very triangular. So you can't always go on that, especially hognose snakes get a very pointy nose to begin with. So those are the best ways to identify a copperhead. These hourglass-like bands going across their back, and their coppery coloration. They're also pit vipers, so I know it's not easy to see. Maybe I can bring them a little closer.
Great.
But
You get closer and I get farther away. Sorry, everyone.
in between the eye and the nostril, there's a pit, which is a heat-sensing pit. So these guys, hence the name pit vipers, just like rattlesnakes and cottonmouths, and some other New World species of vipers like fer-de-lance and bushmats or eyelash vipers are all pit vipers. So they have these heat-sensing pits in between their eye and their nostril that senses the warmth of their prey. Since these guys prey primarily on mammals, sometimes birds, that heat-sensing pit, and because sometimes they often hunt in the dark. They are nocturnal during the summer, during the warmer months. It helps them key in on their prey, because they'll sit motionless in the leaf litter and wait for something to walk in front of them, and then they can strike. And they can sense the warmth up to 0.003 of a degree. So that's how accurate those heat-sensing pits are. Now, copperheads in Connecticut are very habitat specific, so you don't find them everywhere. They prefer southerly facing slopes on talus slopes, basalt ridges, and they also prefer wetlands at the base. So they're very habitat specific, and they don't really migrate far from their habitat. You know, a male might wander a mile or two from their area, but they don't go very far. So they're not all that common here in Connecticut.
Now we are.
Yep. So besides the copperhead, we have another venomous snake in Connecticut called the timber rattlesnake, which is an endangered species and not very common. There's only a few isolated populations still left here in Connecticut. Does anybody have any copperhead questions? If we're still on.
We have 16 viewers.
Nice.
I don't know if my dad is one of them, if he was able to figure out after the interruption.
Now this copperhead, actually, her parents came from central Connecticut. I got a call from someone who was very panicked because they said they had a copperhead at the base of their tree at their house, and they have small dogs and grandkids, and it happened to be her mom. So I went and got the copperhead, and before I could relocate the copperhead, it took me a couple days to find out where exactly the snake came from. She gave birth. She had 14 babies, and I held on to 2 of them for my educational programs, and I released the rest back where I released the mom as well. But this is where she came from. This is a snake that has originated in Connecticut.
So we have 2 questions.
Sure.
Allison Meredith wants to know, is that as large as they get?
Yawning.
Oh.
You missed it.
Well, hopefully I got it. I was just reading questions and it's blocking its mouth. Is this as large as they get?
Male copperheads get bigger than the females, and I think the record length for a copperhead in Connecticut was around 4 feet. A 4-foot copperhead is huge. I've never seen one in my life. The biggest copperhead I ever saw was a little over 3 feet, and that was a big, big snake. With most pit vipers in Connecticut and North America, the males get much larger than the females.
Caleb wants to know, are they born the same color or do they change with age?
They're born a lot lighter. But what's really neat about copperheads, number one, is that they are oviviviparous, which they give birth to live young. So the babies come out alive. They're born in a very thin membrane. They break out and they're on their own. And the babies have yellow tips on their tails. They use it for luring their prey. So what the baby copperheads will do is they'll curl up in some leaves, sit very still, and if a frog or where there's abundant lizards, they'll wiggle their tails really, really fast. And the little yellow tail kind of looks like a caterpillar or a worm or something good for the animal to eat. Gets too close to the copperhead bites it, venom goes into the prey, and then they have their meal. So when they're babies, they are a little bit different, but what they still have the hourglass bands going across their back.
Mike Emmons. Hi, Mike. Do you keep anti-venom on site?
I do for the exotic venomous snakes, for the cobras and mamas and gaboon vipers and things you don't find in North America. I do keep that anti-venom on site. For copperheads and cottonmouths and rattlesnakes, I don't, because the hospitals here carry it. So I don't have to keep, it's called Crofab. That's the common antivenom used for pit viper, North American pit vipers. So I don't keep it on hand because hospitals carry it, and it is super, super expensive. A bottle of Crofab, 10 milliliter bottle, usually goes, the American price is about $3,500 a bottle. And if you get bit by a copperhead or a rattlesnake, it can take anywhere from 30 to 40 vials if it's a really bad bite to treat it. So you'd have a bill of over $100,000 if you didn't have good health insurance. So that's another reason I don't carry it. It's just way too expensive compared to King Cobra antivenom, which costs me $85 a vial.
Tell them what you told me about having antivenom, that you can't administer it. I don't think anyone,
Okay,
a lot of people know that. I
So
thought.
you can, number one, to get antivenom, you have to be a zoo or an exhibitor like Riverside Reptiles. You just can't go to the pharmacy and get it. You know, if you're getting exotic antivenom, you have to get it overseas. You have to go through the FDA. You have to go through the USDA. It's a lot of red tape in getting antivenom. And you have to get a toxicologist or a doctor to sign on with you too, someone who's going to help administer it, because you can't do it yourself. It's not like you get bit by a snake and you give yourself a shot and you're all good. You have to keep it on hand. It has to be many protocols of how to, if you get bit by a snake, you know, you got to talk to your ambulance association, who's going to come, who's going to treat you, how they're going to treat you, how are they going to get the antivenom, to the hospital, to the toxicologist to treat you. So there's a lot of different steps. So venomous snakes are cool. They're one of my favorite animals to work with, but there's a lot of precautions in it as well. Because if you do get bit by one, you know, it is a life and death situation. It doesn't matter if it's a mamba or a copperhead. They're both considered, you know, potentially dangerous, or deadly, I should say. But speaking of copperhead venom, very few deaths occur from copperheads. I think there's been, in the past 50, 60 years, maybe 2 or 3 deaths attributed to copperheads. Their venom isn't considered, you know, super toxic. If you get bit by one, yeah, it'll definitely ruin your day. But most likely it's not going to kill you, even if you didn't get treated with antivenom. They actually only use antivenom if it bites you in a vein or an artery. But if it doesn't, this goes into, if it's just intramuscular, it's usually just get fluids into you to flush the venom out of you, or it just runs its cycle.
And I find it fascinating that many people get bit after they harm the snake.
Yeah.
It happened to my uncle.
Yeah.
He picked
just
up the
leave them
head.
alone. Snakes don't want to bite you, especially venomous snakes. They don't want to waste their venom on you. They're venomous for a specific reason, and that is to kill their prey. And their venom is actually like an advanced stomach acid almost. It's like a predigestant. So the venom goes into a mouse, kills the mouse, and then starts to actually digest and break down the tissues of the mouse. So when the snake is eating the mouse, it's already kind of being digested. So it's less work for the snake. So they don't want to bite you. But they will if they have to. So if you see a snake, doesn't matter if it's a venomous snake or not a venomous snake, watch it, enjoy it, and when you're done looking at it, just walk around it, leave it alone. Most snake bites in the United States are from people messing with the snake. There was a guy in Connecticut. I think the last recorded timber rattlesnake bite was from a guy in Connecticut, and he was drunk and he picked up a rattlesnake. So the lesson here is don't drink and pick up rattlesnakes, I guess. But unfortunately, the snake died. The snake died because his buddy killed the snake, and he went to the hospital and probably had a 6-figure hospital bill. So just leave him alone, they'll leave you alone.
Jim would like to know, is there a black market for antivenom?
There's no black market that I know of antivenom. I don't know if I necessarily trust antivenom that I bought in the black market. There is a black market, unfortunately, for many exotic venomous snakes. The endangered timber rattlesnake in Connecticut is sometimes poached and sold on the black market. There's been, you know, in the past 20 or 30 years, a few arrests that I can think of from people going into rattlesnake dens and catching rattlesnakes to sell them on the black market, unfortunately. And the rattlesnake population in Connecticut, they're endangered because of people. You know, people killed them because they were scared of them.
Jim said that was not him.
Okay, Jim. Well, I answered the question anyway.
Yeah, I don't know if he meant that or something else. Someone else is using your
Facebook. Some
Facebook.
black market antivenom. All right. Well, if we don't have any other questions, we'll start to wrap it up. And again, I apologize for for losing you halfway through the video. We'll probably run this again next week. I'm thinking we'll do the same program next week and talk about copperheads and some snakes that look like them. And I promise we'll work out the kinks and have better Wi-Fi.
Thanks everybody for joining us on this rainy day. Hopefully some kids were able to tune in. We picked 3:30 so that they would be out of school, hopefully. Or home if you're working virtually. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you.